With the Rugby World Cup underway, former South Africa captain Jean de Villiers was in the Express studio to talk about his career, coping with injury and life after professional sport. In South Africa, rugby is about much more than winning a match.
I think the role of rugby within South Africa is a huge one. We always say when I used to play, and obviously still now for the lads still playing, other teams play to win, to score more points than the opposition. I think for us, it's way more than that, because when you win, you provide so much more for the country. And the reason for that is just because of what rugby has done in the past for our country. It coincided with our reintroduction into international sport, the end of apartheid, the change in terms of leadership within South Africa, and all of that coincided with success on the rugby field. But rugby kind of provided the platform for people to celebrate together. In 1995, where we won the World Cup, we hosted it in South Africa. You had something that didn't pull people apart, but actually brought people together, and they were happy together. And they realized that, even though we're very different in terms of certain things, at the end of the day, we're all South African, and if we find a common purpose that brings us together, then there's no reason why we can't function together. And the rest is kind of history in terms of how the country's been able to, from a societal point of view, integrate and totally change to what it is today. You look at the team back in 1995, and you had a lone player in Chester Williams that was representing kind of his people. Now you look at the team, and it's really representative of all South Africans. And that to me is a beautiful thing, because I kind of realized as well that you in a rugby team, because rugby really is the ultimate sport where you are putting your body on the line for your teammate and for your country. It is like going to war, but you can put 15 different people together, guys together, and with totally different backgrounds. And they work towards the same common goal. They don't agree on everything, and still they're happy to say, well, whatever this microphone is, I might say it's silver, and someone else might say it's black, and we can agree that we're both right. But I understand why he says it's silver, and he understands why I say it's black, and suddenly we move on, and we understand each other's differences and whatever, but that actually makes us stronger. So when you ask the question, what rugby does for South Africa, it's way more than just a game. It's way more than just a result, and it's a responsibility that the players definitely realize every single time that they put the jersey on to represent their country. So if you lose, you take joy away from a lot of people in South Africa, and we rather want to be the people that can provide the joy.
And how do you cope with that in a playing environment, and especially when your captain has a different role there again?
Yeah, it is. Again, I sometimes think it's an unfair role for the players, because all you did was just, you've got some talent to play the game of rugby. You obviously put in hard work to eventually get there, and now suddenly there's this added responsibility towards other people that you don't even know. But once you grow into it, and once you realize what it can do, it's extremely powerful, and it's something that drives the players to do so much more, and you actually thrive because of it, because you see the effect. So when you're the captain, then eventually it escalates and increases even more. But again, it's something that I really enjoyed, and I think even in the role that I have now, moving into a business career, it's just a totally different platform, but still being able to do the same, where you change and you impact people's lives. You can create change. So it's a powerful thing, but it's how you use that to make a positive contribution rather than sometimes a negative one.
If you look back on your career, were there any particular challenges and that you would highlight now, and how did you overcome those as well?
Yeah, plenty. And I still maintain that sport is an incredible tool, and specifically rugby, an incredible tool to learn skills to apply in everyday life. Skills that you learn on the sporting field that you can apply in everyday life to eventually make a success. Whether you are a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a whatever, you learn skills through sport, not through professional sport, through participating. And those skills you can apply. So for me, it's been an amazing journey to go on where, I made mistakes along the way. I had successes along the way as well, yes, and you celebrate those. But I had adversity come my way. I had massive disappointments come my way. I had losses. I had to take accountability for what I did. I had to be disciplined in my preparation and my work that I put in. I had to be accountable to my teammates. All these kind of things, and then eventually over time you learn from it and you realize that okay, where I started and where I'm at now, it made me a better human being. But you can apply that also now in a different role that you move into.
What's your one rugby highlight?
I always wanted to play rugby. Rugby, since I can remember, rugby was always part of my life. So to eventually then be in a position where you can literally live your dream and eventually represent South Africa, that was always the dream. So my first test match, that'll always be a highlight, but mine turned out to be a bit of a nightmare as well, because I got injured 7 minutes into the game, got stretchered off, and then I suppose all the big team performances are usually the ones that you really enjoy, because it's not just the game, then it's like post game as well, and the celebrations and the memories created on and off the field. And sometimes the off the field is even you remember that for way longer. So all those, the Tri Nations wins, being part of the squad that won the 2007 World Cup, all those kind of things. But then the one that really brought everything that I love together was, and sometimes it is the individual milestones as well. So your first is your 50th test, but then my 100th test match. So that was played in Wellington, New Zealand. And again, because we lost the game, it's kind of, you don't really feel so great about it. But then my 101st test match, we played at Newlands in Cape Town, a stadium where I learned to love rugby, where I was introduced to the game. It's the first live game I watched was there, first live test match was there. Back then you could still, after the game, run onto the field and actually just you just wanted to touch the jersey of the players on the field, and then post-game you would play around and emulate the guys and imagine that representing South Africa or whatever. So we were playing at Newlands, and I played all my age group level rugby and all my professional rugby in South Africa. I played for Western Province and the Stormers, so at that stadium. We played against Australia. I was captain at the time. I was able to run out with my 2 daughters by my side. My wife pregnant with our son at that stage at the game, my parents at the game, brother at the game, loads of friends. Played Australia, we won the game, I scored 2 tries, and it was kind of like, I can remember after the game, took the 2 girls and they were running around on the pitch, and I was like, well, this is basically everything that I love thrown into one day, thrown into one experience. And I just thought, well, yeah, you should probably retire now. But well, I probably should have. But it was an amazing day. So that would definitely be the highlight of my career.
If I could take you right back to when did you first fall in love with rugby, and when did you know that being a professional rugby player was actually something that you could achieve?
So honestly, I cannot remember a time in my life where I did not want to play rugby. So it's one of those weird things where I think, so my dad played rugby as well, for Western Province, obviously not professional at that stage. And I think, you know, my mom would still tell the story where, you know, when I had to learn for exams or whatever, she would just hear doof, doof, doof against the wall in my room, where I would always have a ball in my hand or a rugby ball spinning, you know, so it was just always there. You know, when did it actually become a realization that it could be a career for me? Again, I think I was a bit naive initially, because I always thought that it would be an option, but it only turned professional a couple of years before I left school. So yeah, I suppose when you get offered that first contract, you know, so the last couple of months that I was still at school, I was getting paid already, and you know, you think you've made it, kind of thing. It changes quite quickly after that, and you realize you have to put in the work, and that there will be disappointments and all of that. But yeah, I think it's the naivety of being a kid and just thinking, well, it not going that way is not even an option, and luckily it worked out for me.
And looking on your career, there's been a few injuries there, and injuries are big occasions as well. Like how do you cope with that? And
yeah, look, injuries are big occasions. Big injuries are bigger occasions, and I had quite a few of them. You know, I always say I had six knee operations, shoulder reconstruction, bicep rupture, broke my jaw twice, you know, so it was a lot. I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for those injuries, though, because I honestly do feel that up until the stage where I made my debut for South Africa at the age of 21, I had it pretty easy. You know, you're basically doing it just on talent. Yes, I worked hard as well, but it came easy. Maybe not easy. Maybe I was lucky in terms of selections and all of that, but it came quickly. So then playing your first test match and moving or working towards all of this, and then getting injured, being stretchered off, suddenly it just puts everything in perspective, and you start realizing that you know, what you love can be taken away so quickly, and you learn through that. So you then kind of learn how to deal with the disappointment. You learn that you need to surround yourself with good people to be able to rely on them when you're not able to move on and keep going. You know, and you appreciate it so much more when you get the opportunity again. So you know, it's a tough thing. In adversity for me, you know, it's a given for anyone and everyone in life. In terms of rugby, it usually comes in the form of injuries, or maybe when you're dropped. But it's something that will happen. Adversity is a given for anyone and everyone. But it really is your attitude in times of adversity that will determine whether you are successful or not eventually, and what you deem success to look like. You know, so I learned through the injuries. You know, some of the losses that we went through as well, same thing. It's tough, and how do you get through that? But the learnings through the injuries have certainly, I think, in my case, made me a better person. You learn through it, and then you can apply it in life now as well.
And we often talk about a professional sportsman. Once your career is over, that can be a really difficult time, couldn't it? Like, a lot of your support networks are pulled away, a lot of your friendships, your teammates, the professional help you have. So can you take me through a little bit about your approach to that and how you've ended up doing what you're doing now?
Well, look, the reality is everything changes once you retire, because it literally is everything that I ever worked towards was to become a rugby player. Then you do whatever you can to be a good one and to maintain that level. You know, and at that stage you get a decent salary. You probably have sponsored clothing, a sponsored car. You know, when you walk into a room, people recognize you. People want to talk to you. You might go to a restaurant, and then you get the meal for free or whatever. your week is planned out by your team and by your trainers, etc. So you know what your diary, your diary basically gets planned for you. You're traveling a lot, so you're basically at home only 6 months of the year, probably as much as that. Then you retire and everything changes. Your salary, your income goes from here to zero immediately. All the other add-ons and luxuries, slowly but surely goes away as well. You're at home all the time, so your wife and kids now suddenly need to get used to you being there all the time. And it might sound strange, but you need to adapt to that now suddenly, because they in their structure, now you're actually making a mess of it now. And I suppose the most important thing is that now you have to reinvent yourself and find the same purpose and meaning and in a job that is totally different to what you've been doing. Now, I was lucky in that I could, I moved into a role with SuperSport, which is a sports broadcaster back in South Africa. So you stayed connected. So I stayed connected with rugby on a different level, but kind of it kind of still gives you a into something that you're just so passionate about. And with a company called Citadel, which is a wealth management company, and in Guernsey we under the Peregrine Wealth Management name, and there I moved into a role as head of our philanthropy division. Now I mentioned earlier that it kind of gave me the opportunity to have the same impact that I had as a player, but now on a different platform. Now, firstly, the first 6 months I was just on a kind of pay-as-you-go system, where for 6 months we looked at, okay, can it work out? And then after 6 months they had to see, well, is there full employment or not? And luckily I got the full employment, but it was a hell of a lot of hard work that initial 6 months, just trying to figure out what to do. It was kind of a new role within the organization as well, to see. I took over from someone else, but he had far more background in terms of the space and probably better qualified. I came with a different skill set, but the big question was, how do you apply that skill set to really add value to the organization? And luckily over time I was able to get that right. But I suppose I was lucky I'm definitely one of the lucky few that could move into something and transition quite quickly, but still it definitely wasn't easy for me, so and like I said, I'm one of the lucky few. The others, guys struggle massively with that transition, because you need to reinvent yourself. You need to, and I think the best way to describe it is probably someone going through retirement. You're in a corporate job for 50 years, 40 years maybe, and then at the age of 65 or 70, then you retire and you move into something new. We do that at the age of 35. And you still have how many years to live after that. So. And then the financial pressures, that starts weighing heavily. So, I got through it, and what's it now? 7 years later, I'm comfortable now where I'm at. But it definitely wasn't easy.
You're obviously still staying in touch with the game as well. I know last year you were doing some work with the young rugby players in Guernsey as well. Yeah,
so through my SuperSport connection, I'm still involved with the game. We've done some stuff here in Guernsey. And look, all over the world. That's actually how I eventually got the job, was because I've been an ambassador for quite a few charities throughout my career, and I saw what sport can do. And that kind of led to me getting the philanthropy role within Citadel. So it's just continuing with that as well, just using sport as a tool to upskill, to help with social cohesion, to help kids find purpose in a family, within a sporting environment, finding a family, because a lot of these kids come from environments where it's not conducive for a kid to grow up, and specifically in South Africa. And one of the charities that I'm an ambassador for is the Laureate Sports for Good Foundation, and I think the first year of the Laureate Sports Awards, former President Nelson Mandela actually spoke at those awards, and he's the patron of the organisation, and the famous words of sport has the power to change the world. Where he gave that speech, and it definitely does. But he went on in that speech and said, it speaks to the youth in a language that they understand. And throughout the world, you do sport and you get a ball or whatever, you play around and suddenly everyone understands each other. But you learn through this, and that's why using sport as that tool to create change, I think is one of the most powerful things in the world.
And moving back to the current day as well, obviously we're in the midst of the Rugby World Cup now. Could you give us a few thoughts on this South African side and what you think their chances are?
Well, I think up until about an hour ago, when we started recording this, our chances were very, very good. I think that has declined since. So firstly, in the game on the weekend, when Etzebeth got injured, so he's a doubt for a couple of weeks. But also yesterday in training, and that was just confirmed now, Malcolm Marks ruptured his ACL in his knee. So he's out for the whole tournament. And those are probably the two players that they could least afford to lose. So I'm still confident. I'm a little bit less confident now with the injuries to those two players. But then again, sometimes something like that brings the team together. So we'll have to wait and see. We're definitely good enough to win this World Cup, but the problem is that we've probably got another 3 teams that are good enough to win it as well. So, on the day, you're going to need a little bit of luck. You're going to need no serious injuries to key players. But yeah, only time will tell. It was a good start to the competition with the win against Scotland.
I did want to touch on this because I was there in Brighton watching when you played Japan. Can you take me through that a little bit as a player, how that match was unfolding?
Yeah.
Because it was like, obviously from the stands, there's a shock of what was going on.
Yeah, it's one of those games, and probably going to take a long time to answer this question, because I think that, again, so many learnings through it. It was one of those games where we always felt in control, but you never got a big enough lead to really feel confident. And that might sound weird, but it was, we felt okay, and then a mistake, and then they kicked 3 points, and they're within 7 again. And then only probably in the last 2-3, maybe call it 5 minutes of the game, I started thinking, well, we could actually lose this game. When they decided to go for the scrum rather than just kick the 3 points for the draw, then you start realizing, well, okay, we're on our goal line. They've been pretty good in the way that they've treated the scrum, because it was just in and out and play. And the crowd was getting behind them, and you could just feel the momentum certainly going their way. So eventually we lost the game, but I think the important thing is then to sit down as a team and say, well, okay, why did we lose? Yes, okay, we scored less points than Japan did, but did we play badly, or did they play really well? Did they execute better? And what can we change to make sure that we get back on track? And I think when we analysed that game, we realised Japan was really good on the day. Their prep beforehand, their execution on the day, a little bit of luck here and there, maybe a call or two going their way or whatever. On the day they deserve to win. we didn't play badly, but we knew that we could play so much better. And we now had to decide, okay, well, what needed to change? How do we change that? Or rather, what do we have control of that needs to be changed? And how do we change that? And what I'm very proud of is the fact that that team then got together, we changed things around, and we pushed New Zealand in the semi-final to within 2 points, and they were the eventual winners. And the difference was basically a Dan Carter snap drop goal. 3 points to them, we lose the game by 2. Because those scenarios, and it's probably similar to what the Boks are in now, when you have a big disappointment like that, it either brings the team together or it totally scatters them apart. And you learn a lot from the individuals through that. So, I'm very proud in the way that the team got together the following week against Samoa, and then the rest of the tournament. So, sometimes you need to give credit to the opposition, and you have a view of a certain person, team, organisation, and that changes once you've experienced it. So I think it's the beauty of sport as well, in that within a sporting game, anything can happen. You see it in cricket a lot now. You probably don't see it in rugby that much, but certainly that game, 4 years later, Japan played in the quarterfinal of the Rugby World Cup. So it's not that they're a bad team. It was probably just the way they were viewed prior to that game. So I think it was a brilliant day for rugby, for World Rugby, and especially the fact that the Rugby World Cup was in Japan 4 years later than that. We actually did them a massive favour, So I'm taking credit for the success of the 2019 Rugby World Cup.
That's brilliant. If there's anything else you want to add as well, just an open question.
No, not really. I know that I think ITV is showing all the live Rugby World Cup games. So I think to everyone watching, just to enjoy that, and hopefully it's a good World Cup, and you enjoy the broadcast, and might see me a little bit on TV as well.